I thought I was helping a hero get home. A good man, serving his country in a dangerous place. In reality, I was sending my life savings to a criminal. I wasn't just losing money. I was losing the man I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with. But he never existed. She believed she was helping a heroic soldier return from a dangerous deployment. In reality, she was wiring her life savings to a sophisticated criminal network that uses love as a weapon. This is a story of how one woman's search for connection led her down a path of devastating deception, orchestrated by a phantom who wore a soldier's uniform to steal not just her money, but her very sense of reality. Her name is Julie Eriksen, and she lost over $400,000. Her story is a harrowing look inside one of the cruelest and most widespread crimes happening today: the military romance scam. It's a scam that preys on our deepest desires for love and our highest respect for those who serve. By the end of this, you'll understand not only how it happened, but how you can make sure it never happens to you or anyone you love. Before her life was turned upside down, Julie Eriksen was like millions of other people. She was navigating a world that can feel lonely, just looking for a meaningful connection. She was a kind, trusting person who'd built a comfortable life for herself through years of hard work. Her savings weren't from a lottery win or some lucky investment. They were the product of discipline and planning, a nest egg she carefully set aside for a future, for her retirement. Like so many people, she turned to the internet to find a partner. Dating sites promise a world of possibilities, a digital landscape where your perfect match could be just a click away. There's a vulnerability baked into this process, isn't there? You build a profile, you share pieces of yourself, your hopes, your interests, and you put your trust in the system and the people you meet. Julie wasn't naive. She knew about the usual risks of online dating. But the person she was about to meet wasn't just a typical bad date. He was a frontman for a calculated criminal operation designed to exploit the very best parts of her nature: her capacity to love, her empathy, and her deep-seated respect for the military. She wasn't a mark chosen at random. She was a target, likely selected because her profile suggested she was compassionate and sincere. These are the exact qualities romance scammers hunt for. They aren't looking for the cynical or the suspicious. They're looking for the hopeful. The profile that caught Julie's "I belong to a man named Mark." The photos showed a handsome, uniformed soldier with a kind smile, a man who radiated strength, stability, and integrity. His profile was perfectly crafted to be both heroic and sensitive. He was a soldier, sure, but he also wrote with eloquence and expressed a longing for a deep, lasting connection. When he first reached out to Julie, the connection was electric. Their conversation started with emails and quickly blossomed into hours-long phone calls that stretched late into the night. Mark was a master of love bombing. He showered Julie with attention and compliments, making her feel seen, understood, and cherished in a way she hadn't in a long time. He seemed to hang on her every word, remembering small details and bringing them up later, creating a powerful illusion of intimacy. He built a fantasy world just for them. They talked about their futures, about what they would do when they finally met, the places they'd go, the life they'd build. To Julie, this wasn't just some casual online flirtation. It felt real, profound. The man on the other end of the line was everything she'd been looking for: strong, emotionally available, and utterly devoted to her. He was, in every sense, the perfect man. And for a little while, it was a beautiful dream. But that dream was built on a foundation of stolen photos and calculated lies, and was about to turn into a nightmare. After a few weeks of intense, nonstop communication, the first big lie fell into place. Mark told Julie he was being deployed on a dangerous, top-secret mission overseas. This one lie is a cornerstone of the military romance scam, and it's brutally effective. First, it taps into the immense respect and trust we have for service members. A soldier on a dangerous mission is a hero, someone to be admired and supported. Second, it's the perfect excuse for why he can't meet in person. He's in a conflict zone, a remote location where travel is impossible. Third, and most critically, it creates a bulletproof reason for why he can never video chat. He'd claim he was on a classified mission where military security rules forbade cameras, or that the internet on his remote base was too weak for anything but text and occasional call. This wall of excuses isolates the victim. It prevents the one simple act, a live video call, that would instantly expose the whole fraud. Mark would describe the dangers of his deployment in vivid detail, sharing stories of close calls and the stress of his work. This wasn't just a story, it was a tactic. It was designed to make Julie feel like she was his vital support system, his one lifeline to a normal world back home. He'd tell her that her messages were the only thing keeping him going. This dynamic subtly changed their relationship. Julie was no longer just a potential partner. She was his confidant, his emotional anchor in a storm of chaos. By framing himself as a lonely hero in a foreign land, the scammer made Julie feel not just wanted, but needed. And that feeling would soon become the primary tool for stealing her money. Once the stage was set and the emotional hooks were in, the first request for money came. It wasn't for thousands of dollars. It was small, almost trivial, and wrapped in a believable, heart-wrenching story. Maybe it was a few $100s because his military phone broke and he needed a new one to keep talking to her. Or perhaps it was for a small fee for a sick relative back home, a problem he couldn't handle from so far away. These first requests are a test. The scammer is feeling out the victim's willingness to cross that line from emotional to financial support. For Julie, the request probably caused a moment of hesitation. It's a natural red flag. But this is where the psychological manipulation pays off. She wasn't sending money to a stranger. She was helping Mark, the man she stayed up all night talking to, the man risking his life for his country, the man she was falling in love with. In her mind, saying no would feel like abandoning him. So, against her better judgment, she sent the money. And when he got it, his gratitude was overwhelming. He told her she was a savior, that he didn't know what he would do without her. This is a crucial part of the trap. It reframes sending money not as a loss, but as an affirmation of their love. That first small transaction was the crack in the dam. It set a new precedent in their relationship. Julie had now made a financial investment in Mark. And with that first crack, the scammers knew they had her. They knew they could come back for more. The floodgates were about to open. What came next was a relentless, methodical draining of Julie Eriksen's life savings. The scam operated on a cruel cycle. A desperate problem, a request for money, and a new, more complicated problem the moment the money was sent. This is a sophisticated tactic, designed to keep the victim in a constant state of crisis and hope. It started with the biggest promise of all, his return home. Mark claimed he had enough leave time to visit, but he needed money for a plane ticket. Real-life military personnel do not pay for their own flights home from a deployment, but Julie didn't know that. She was just ecstatic at the thought of finally meeting the man she loved. She sent the money, her heart full of excitement. Then, just days before he was supposed to leave, disaster struck. Mark called in a panic. He'd been robbed, he claimed. The ticket money was gone. He was devastated, stuck, and the only person he could possibly turn to was her. Believing his story, Julie dug deeper into her savings and sent more. This pattern repeated with sickening creativity. Every time a solution was funded, a new, more elaborate obstacle appeared. There were sudden, non-existent customs fees to ship his belongings to the U.S. There were unexpected medical emergencies that he claimed weren't covered by the military. Each story was more urgent and more heartbreaking than the last. The request ballooned from hundreds to thousands, then tens of thousands of dollars. Julie was liquidating her retirement accounts, taking out loans, doing whatever it took to solve the next crisis, and finally bring Mark home. Her life became a frantic cycle of waiting for the next phone call, the next problem, the next wire transfer. She was so deep in the fantasy and so financially invested that turning back felt impossible. Admitting it was all a lie would mean admitting she'd lost not just a fortune, but the entire future she had so desperately believed in. She was trapped in a downward spiral, and it was taking everything she had. So where was all this money actually going? Who was the real Mark? The handsome face in the photos belonged to a man named Bryan Denny, a real, retired U.S. Army colonel. But Colonel Denny wasn't on a secret mission, and he wasn't in love with Julie Eriksen. He was at home in the United States, completely unaware that his identity had been stolen and weaponized. In 2016, Colonel Denny discovered that his photos were being used to create thousands of fake profiles on dating sites and social media all over the world. He was the unwitting face of a massive criminal enterprise. He described the surreal experience of breaking up with someone every week, women who would track him down, convinced they were in a relationship with him, only to have their hearts broken. The scammers had stolen his photos, his service record, and his good name to perpetrate their fraud on a global scale. These scams are not the work of lone wolves. They are sophisticated, organized criminal networks, often operating out of countries like Nigeria and Ghana. They share scripts, tactics, and lists of potential targets. They are experts in psychological manipulation, using empathy as their primary weapon. In a tragic irony, the very thing that makes a soldier's identity so trustworthy, their reputation for honor, is what makes them the perfect disguise for these criminals. The money Julie was sending was being funneled through a complex web of accounts, often converted into cryptocurrency or gift cards to make it nearly impossible to trace. Frustrated by the scale of the problem, Colonel Denny co-founded a group called Advocating Against Romance Scams with Kathy Waters. Their organization works to educate the public, support victims, and push for change. The man in the picture was a victim. 2. His identity held hostage by an invisible army of criminals using his face to shatter lives. For Julie, the breaking point wasn't a single moment of clarity, but a slow, agonizing dawn of reality. It came when she had nothing left to give. After months of sending money, her savings were gone. Her retirement accounts were empty. She had exhausted every financial resource she had. And still, Mark wasn't home. There was always one more fee, one more document, one more crisis. The final lie became too much to bear. Maybe a concerned friend or a bank teller finally broke through the wall of deception she had built around herself. The details of that final moment are personal, but the feeling she described is universal among victims. The realization is like a physical blow. She described the moment she understood the truth as absolutely crushing. It's a feeling that goes far beyond money. It's the implosion of a world you thought was real. The man she loved, the future she had planned, the sacrifices she had made, all of it was a lie. The love and concern she had been shown weren't genuine. They were a performance, lines from a script. The emotional fallout was catastrophic. The shame and embarrassment were overwhelming, a common feeling that scammers count on to keep their victims silent. The sense of betrayal was so profound that Julie admitted she experienced suicidal thoughts. This wasn't just a bad investment. It was a complete destruction of her trust in others and in herself. The man she had given everything for had never existed. In the devastating aftermath, Julie did what victims are told to do. She went to police. She brought her story, her evidence, and her pain, hoping for justice. But she felt her concerns were not taken seriously. This is another tragically common part of the experience. Law enforcement can be dismissive. And because these crimes are international, they are incredibly difficult to prosecute. The money is often gone in an instant, scattered across the globe. Julie was left to pick up the pieces alone. The financial toll was staggering. A loss estimated to be between $400,000 and $500,000. It was her entire life savings, the security she had worked her whole life to build. That money was gone forever. But the emotional cost was even higher. The scam had left her with deep psychological scars, struggling with feelings of shame, isolation, and a profound sense of violation. Her story is a stark reminder that this isn't a niche crime. In 2023 alone, the FTC received over 64,000 reports of romance scams, with reported losses hitting a staggering $1.14 billion. And that's just what gets reported. Many victims suffer in silence, too ashamed to come forward. Julie Eriksen's story is not an outlier. It's a high-profile example of a silent epidemic that leaves a trail of financial and emotional devastation in its wake. Julie's story is a heartbreaking tragedy, but it must also serve as a powerful warning. The tactics used against her are repeated every single day. Understanding the scammer's playbook is the most critical step in protecting yourself and those you care about. So, how do you spot a fake soldier? First, and this is the absolute number one rule, never, ever send money, gift cards, or cryptocurrency to someone you have not met in person. There are no exceptions. Real service members will never ask civilians for money for food, travel, medical care, or administrative fees. The military provides for its personnel, period. Any request for money is an immediate, definitive red flag. Second, be wary of the perfect excuse. The scammer will always have a reason why they can't meet in person or get on a video call. The classified mission or bad internet is a classic lie. A persistent refusal to let you see them live on camera is a near certain sign of deception. Third, watch the speed of the relationship. Scammers use love bombing to create intense emotional connections very, very quickly. If someone is declaring their undying love after only a few weeks of talking online, you need to hit the brakes and be skeptical. Real relationships take time. Fourth, play detective. Use a reverse image search on their profile pictures. Just upload their photo to a search engine. Often, you'll find the same photos being used on other sites under different names, or you'll find the profile of the real person whose identity was stolen. Finally, trust your gut and talk to people you trust. Scammers work hard to isolate their victims, often telling them to keep the relationship a secret. This is just a tactic to keep your friends and family from noticing the red flags you might be missing. If something feels off, talk about it. A fresh perspective can break the manipulator's spell. The people who fall victim to romance scams aren't foolish. They are targets. They are victims of sophisticated, organized criminal networks that perfected the art of exploiting our most fundamental human need, the need for love and connection. They weaponize trust and turn empathy into an entry point for theft. Julie Eriksen's story is a testament to the devastating power of this crime. She lost her savings, but the criminals who targeted her also stole her sense of safety, her trust, and her belief in the good of others. By sharing these stories, by understanding the tactics, and by knowing the red flags, we can fight back. If you suspect someone is a romance scammer, cut off all contact immediately. Report their profile to the social media or dating site. You should also file a report with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3, and the Federal Trade Commission. You are not alone, and your report can help save others from becoming victims. The most powerful thing you can do right now is share this information. You might just save a friend, a family member, or even a stranger from a broken heart and a lifetime of debt.